Signore e signori, buongiorno.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of my president, Lorenzo Cagnoni, and the CEO, Corrado Peragoni, I would like to welcome you to the Voice International Community event. Many thanks to those who are here present physically and those who are connected with our social media. Today, we're going to speak about watches. As you know, Vicenza Oro and Voice represent international jewelry throughout its supply chain. And as you know, in recent editions of Vicenza Oro, we started to have also watches. In particular, in January, we launched the Buyer Vintage, an edition very much devoted to watches. We were very happy with the results, with the success of the edition, and we will have a new one in next January. And we wanted to keep a link with the fascinating world of watches, with all its sides, and today we will have a side which will be debated here today. Now, I give the floor to Dodi Giussani, director of L'Orologio, the most well-known Italian magazine in the area of watches. Thank you so much, Dodi, for your time. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Good morning, everybody. We're here to speak about a very hot topic related to the watch industry, and not only that, but in the world of jewelry, the watch is the most hit, let's say, element in the market of counterfeits. And today we're going to speak about online counterfeiting. We have our guests here, and then another person who will be connected via streaming. Now, I would like to introduce Mario Peserico, president of Assorologi, the National Association of watch producers and distributors, and also president of INDICAM, the Association for the Protection of Intellectual Property. And then we have the pleasure to have General Renzo Nisi, the commander of the Special Goods and Services Department of the Financial Police. And then we have an expert in terms of digital protection, Luca Vespignani, the founder of Digital Content Protection. And then we have Alessandro Nicolis, on behalf of Amazon, Brand Relations Manager of Amazon. And then we should have a streaming connection. Mrs. Laurence Morel-Chevalier. Good morning. IP and Brand Protection Director of Bulgari. Welcome. I'd like to start with a short introduction to our topic. I'd like to draw your attention to this topic. Well, we are speaking about a sector, an illegal activity which produces a lot of damage, hundreds and hundreds of millions of euros, so it's not peanuts. And we see that in the news. There is a growing activity by police forces supported by brands for the protection of final consumers in the end, who, in most cases, are unaware of the danger and of the problem when they buy a product, also by means of legal channels. So we will focus on online e-commerce, which has become very important, sometimes the most important channel for the buying of luxury products. Now, Mario Peserico, please, could you introduce the topic of our conference? Yeah, again, good morning. I'd like to describe this problem, and then the other guests will add their competencies and their opinions. So let's describe the sector. Counterfeiting is worth $500 billion in the world, 12 in Italy. We're speaking about general counterfeiting. So these 12 billion in Italy do not consider that most of the counterfeiting which gets to Europe then gets to Italy, because counterfeited products may arrive to Hamburg or Rotterdam, and then they are taken also by car to the other markets. And unfortunately, Italy has a record here at a European level. So 12.5 billion. And the sector of jewelry and watches, according to the latest estimates of IPO, that is the European office which deals with intellectual property, well, the damage, the value of counterfeiting is equal to 1.9 billion. To this sum, we have to add the loss of 30,000 jobs and a whole consequence in terms of taxes, etc. And then another important aspect of counterfeiting, as we know it, is the fact that behind counterfeiting, and General Nisi will tell us more about that, well, behind counterfeiting, we have organized crime, and that's very bad, because of course, this huge amount of money favors the involvement of organized crime. According to estimates, for $1 or euro invested, $10 are produced in the counterfeiting market. So you see that a 1 to 10 investment is very profitable. And the legal risks are very marginal, because in order to demonstrate that it is the organized crime which is responsible for online sales, well, you need a lot of time and you need a lot of intelligence activity. It is evident that in these past 10, 12 years, the web has become the main channel, the main instrument for the transfer of these counterfeited products. Well, counterfeiting 15 years ago was very different. Along the beaches, we had people selling those fake watches, but the situation has completely changed now. Now, products are very, very similar to the original products. And the web is the main instrument for selling these products. Now, if one wants to buy counterfeiting products, and 60% of people are aware that they are buying counterfeited products, do that without any risks, because delivering a package from the source country to the final consumer never entails any risk. So it is necessary, and that's the reason why we asked Amazon to be present, because we would like to know what they do in order to contrast this problem. Now, today, it is more difficult to have a seizure of the products. In Indicam, both the brands which are associated and the police forces can share information about the products and have in real time the visibility of what is counterfeited, thus helping police forces to be as timely as possible. Yeah, I know that you have an app or a software, yeah, to help police forces. Yes, we have Mercurus, which is an app, and it can be used by our members and by the police forces. Now, so this is the backdrop of this market. A market which is not going through any crisis, apparently, and which, during this lockdown period, grew exponentially because physical shops were closed, and 3/5 of those who buy do that being aware that they are buying counterfeited products. And there are sites which are mirror sites which perfectly reproduce the official websites, and they fall in the trap of counterfeiters. So now, General Nisi, what we normally see on TV or in newspapers is seizures. From time to time, we get the news that a given quantity of watches has been seized. And this entails fashion and luxury goods, because there is a lot of money involved. So what is behind that seizure that we see on TV with all those watches on tables? Well, first of all, good morning, and thank you so much for inviting me. Well, this is a very good opportunity to present our activity in this sector, which for us is very important. That is the protection of honest companies and the protection and defense of labor, because let's not forget that the counterfeit industry, apart from mobilizing a lot of money, actually subtracts jobs, thus creating unemployment and serious problems, social problems. Well, the fake industry, as you said, hits every sector, involves every sector. Today, we're speaking about luxury products, that is jewelry or watches, where Italian design is very high in the world. And this is even worse. But then we have other sectors involved, medicines, for example. So everything is counterfeited, practically. Well, I have a short presentation which will help me tell you what we do so that market practitioners can know what we do and can know how we can help them. So we are spread out throughout the territory. This is our schematic organization. On the territory, we have the forces which are on the field, and certainly you know our officers because you see them in the streets. We have a capillary presence throughout the territory, and we can provide this service of repression. So in terms of goods and services special forces, well, the activity of this force is very particular. It's very special because it's like a key room where we in Rome receive all the information about the activities carried out by the local forces. We assess those activities, and then on the basis of that, we give a feedback, and we help them, for example, go and put the nose in some specific activities. So what we do is basically to drive the activities. This is the subdivision of our several activities. I'll go very rapidly because I don't want to bore you. Well, we're not the only actors in the territory, also in the area to counterfeiting. So we're not alone, because it's also local police, for example, who carry out these activities. So those illegal sellers who were mentioned by our moderator earlier as going in the beaches, or the president actually said that about those illegal sellers. Well, we deal with a more structured type of business. So how do you carry out your investigation activity? Well, let's go on. Well, there are different levels. We can start from the territory, from the department, which knows its territory and knows that in a given warehouse, in a given area, there is counterfeited ware. And so the department intervenes and actually finds what they were looking for, and then they gives us notice about the results and all the information about suppliers, payments, all the information that they have been able to collect, and then we reprocess in our control room this information in order then to give further information to other departments. And what about online activity? Well, the same is done at a central level. We navigate the web, and where we identify a website or a social media, there is a lot of counterfeiting in Facebook, much less in Amazon. I'm not saying that because Amazon is here, but because they already have their specific activity. So they already have an activity of internal control, which keeps the shop window clean. Now, whatever goes in social media creates a lot of damage, and the social media are often used as not alone, but as a link in a chain of counterfeiting, because the social media represents the shop window. So I show you the product. And then if you want to get in touch with me, you use WhatsApp or instead of Telegram. So the moment of presentation of the product is separated from the moment of negotiation. And this is what happens online. Well, the industrial property right is a very important issue in the web. In the case of watches, I have some news about a recent activity that we carried out. You will remember that because it dates back to last week in the northeast of Italy. This is an activity which has resulted from a contribution by Chanel. Chanel got in contact with us to tell us that online they found some of their products which were counterfeited. Well, the website only shows the goods, and it's not easy to go back to what is behind that. So we carry out our investigations, and we see that it is a laboratory close to here, close to Venice. We reconstruct the situation. That laboratory had been active up to 2016. They were registered, but then they closed the activity, but they continued to work illegally. So they had a know-how, they had industrial capacity, and they continued to work, but on the dark side. So in this case, it's nothing to do with imports from China or other non-European countries. So it's made in Italy production. Yes, made in Italy production, also coming from China partly. And they could really advertise their products because in the warehouse of that laboratory, there was a sort of a registration room where they did a sort of a telesale that they advertised through the social media. And that entailed a good return. And after understanding the context, we took the information, we transferred it to the territorial department in Portogruaro. They continued they did some investigations in the territory to understand whether the problem was limited to that laboratory. And then they intervened. They arrested 2 people. And they seized 11,000 products for a value of several hundreds of thousands of euros. Sorry for interrupting you, because I would like to have the opinion of Mrs. Moret-Chevalier, because here we are starting to understand, and we want to understand how to protect the brands and what activities they carry out to prevent and to contrast this problem.
Buongiorno innanzitutto a tutti.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening, depending where you are. The previous speakers stated that counterfeiting and the fight against it online is a real war. It's a challenge that we cannot ignore. And the online sales are getting more and more important. During the lockdown, selling online was the only choice. So those who were not ready to battle these competitors had major difficulties. According to some studies, it was shown that it was an emergency situation. Europol confirmed that the number of online frauds had a dramatic increase. That is not only affecting the luxury industry. There are faked masks, sanitizing gels, which have been forged. Some were ready to fight that. Unfortunately, there was a massive presence of forgeries on the market, so we have to redress our strategies. We already spoke of that in terms of company advertising. In the past, the advertising was paper-based on magazines and so on. Today, the trend is completely changed. Indeed, we first of all communicate through the internet and the social media. I think that, of course, companies love to be closer to their customers. And sorry to interrupt you. Communicating online allows you to redress potential customers to your e-commerce website. That is true. However, that implies maximum transparency that is necessary if you want to fight counterfeiting. Consumers, even though we have forgery websites closed, often so consumers are not directly and immediately informed. There are discount sales on a website, and indeed, consumers cannot trace fake or forgery sites. So openness and communication is extremely important. We need to modernize the approach, because there are strategies which are completely obsolete. Today, we work on platforms, and there is a major responsibility on part of platform providers. Some of them are very well organized so that people can follow very strict procedures, so that you can, bring competitors or dishonest competitors to court. So transparency and speed are key words. We are on the internet. We cannot make timings longer. I mean, the time when a product is in a way or the other suspended, that means we do not know whether it's legal or not. There are specific issues. There is a need to harmonize the procedures which exist in order to take forged products down the internet, to remove them from the internet. We need to be able to react immediately against the repeated offenders, those who maybe appear for the second time with a different name. So all these elements are key. We should not forget that consumers should know what's going on. So our battle is 360 degrees and we do that through specific providers who do monitoring on the internet. Sorry to interrupt you. We do have an expert on the subject here. I would like to invite Mr. Luca Vestignani. You have been working for 25 years on this issue, on this topic. The gentleman is from Digital Content Protection, the CEO. Indeed, in these 25 years, many radical changes have occurred. I, was there at the time of cassettes, then DVDs, then the booming of digital media, which devastated many companies, and media, which is now today used to sell counterfeited items. Well, first of all, in May 1996, Napster was created. That was, like a thunderstorm, devastating companies connected with copyrights, and also brands were devastated, even if some still use their principle. Napster undermined completely the relationship between the owner of an intellectual right and digital. Digital means a free of charge tool to disseminate illegality. This is what Napster did. What was the response to that turning point? Well, the answer was given with technology. There has always been a major gap between the owner of rights to defend them and those who breached them. So the gap indeed was filled partially with new technologies such as anti-takedown tools, so that the platform can remove contents massively and automatically. Often so we speak about artificial intelligence. These are automation mechanisms. There is no intelligence there. So that allows to eliminate 90-95% of the phenomenon. Still, there is a small percentage where the use and application of criminal law is a key element. Those cases where acting is very difficult, or maybe the platform is not collaborating, or there are some critical points, so you have to resort to law. There are also different tools available which are not part of monitoring. So you do monitoring on the web. What is the next step? Once you have identified a forger, what do? Do you inform the brand owners? Do you call the police? Well, monitoring is mainly used to identify the highest number of breaches or violation cases, because sometimes you use monitoring to identify auctions on Alibaba or eBay, music files on a track of BitTorrent, or violations on social network. The second stage can be manually, fully, or totally automated. That is the validation of monitoring. Then another fully automated stage, that is, we notify platforms, asking them to take down the contents. Some of them are fully compliant, so they take down. Others take down but create problems. Other cases, they do nothing. There are reluctant cases, platforms who do not take down, or cases where the phenomenon is critical, no automation is applied, so we resort to the court, and so on and so forth. That was the first major revolution. The second has no date, something which has occurred over time, something which happened about 7 to 8 years ago, and which has changed the scenario. There was a major change in the figure of the enemy. What a big word. I started with cassettes, so I went with the financial police in masterizing stations where a lot of equipment and thousands of CDs were mastered. And the enemy was the real counterfeiter. Today things have changed, and indeed what is key is working with platforms and the liabilities of platforms. We might have marketplaces or our providers or CDNs or video streaming systems, all those entities allowing a third party to distribute, sell or make content public. Here we are putting at stake the future of the industry. Many platforms are still working. Some of them have proactive systems to identify contents. Amazon is doing, YouTube does that with Content ID. Some systems are more effective than others, but there are platforms who are doing nothing. So they have no system to help the owners of contents to do that. It's a regulation challenge. Well, my question is this. Is the platform mandated by law when they receive a notification to take down contents or not? Well, we would have to stay here till tomorrow to speak about that. There are reference rules. The main one is that on e-commerce is a European directive received by Italy in 2003, speaking about the liability of platforms, but also with some derogations. Some platforms are fully passive in distribution. YouTube, for example, they say, my user uploaded the video, I did nothing. So they are in the exemption, derogation regime. We had some sentences passed in Italy stimulating a recent directive named the Copyright Directive, which modified the scenario. It states, following the Delta TV against YouTube ruling, well, they stated you can't say you are passive when you propose contents to users, create lists, and gain a lot of money thanks to advertising. So indeed, the scenario has changed. And also the political atmosphere is different. Now the Copyright Directive states that platforms have liability. So the scenario is evolving rapidly. And in the future, we will have to regulate the relationship with platforms and review the liability regime. I'd like to give the floor to Alessandro Nicolis. Will you please tell us something about Amazon policies? What do you do to protect buyers and the other actor? Sorry, I'd like to add something important, if I may, refer to watches and clocks. According to our research, the watches on Facebook, well, 53% of them are faked, forged. That is a key point. Sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm glad you said enemy, because we have a common enemy. Our enemy is the same you have. And in the fight against this enemy, indeed, Amazon has changed its activity. We have focused on technology. We are not only blocking the enemy once they've done something illegal, but we try to do that before. So we try to identify that potential enemy so that we can prevent them to do something illegal on our platform. I have a very short presentation to briefly explain what we do proactively, being totally independent thanks to our algorithms and technology. Still, we have to say that collaboration and partnership with the right owners is a key element. Why are we doing what we do to protect the brand? Well, we have a customer obsession. Customers are final purchasers and also right owners. We are well aware that there is a lot of energy needed to get the loyalty and the trust of consumers. At the same time, losing it following a bad experience can also happen very rapidly. Counterfeiting is a bad experience that we want to prevent. And we realize that when a customer buys a counterfeited product, indeed they will not come back to buy on our platform. We have defined a brand registry tool 3 years ago. It indeed is useful because all right owners can notify the violation. They can upload the information there on their intellectual rights. And Amazon is doing something proactive on that. Just to give you an idea of the extent of this phenomenon, the number of brands present in brand registry is more than 350,000. Anytime a notice of infringement is received, Amazon removes more than 100 suspected listings. Our teams, our investigators processing the notifications work on a 24/7 basis. The pillars of the platform are the automated brand protection rules. They are automated based on our algorithm. They are continually improved thanks to the machine learning process. We do have a report violation tool, which is the notice of infringement available to the brand. Then we have the Amazon Project Zero that offers the right owners, and this is unprecedented, can directly take down without action of the platform, so they can directly remove and take down the counterfeited items. And then the transparency tool. As we told you, there are automated filters They act based on brands, on trademarks and copyrighted terms. They also work on a country basis. If we are notified that a country is excluded from the listings, we do that. There is an image recognition mechanism as well as the logos. Report a violation is a very intuitive tool. An international search can be done very rapidly on the platform. Then you have access to a log of reports and the outcomes. And you can also have access to the seller info who had put an item on sale. So there is a totally transparent system. As for Project Zero, you can immediately remove the counterfeited products. Transparency is a tool to serialize every unit. So that prevents items from reaching our fulfillment centers.
È un programma molto importante che è quella della verifica dei venditori che provano a registrarsi su Amazon, che dovranno affrontare un processo di verifica della propria identità di persona. Adesso, dovuto al Covid, ovviamente questa verifica sta avvenendo tramite videochiamata, e però c'è quindi tutto un processo quindi è diventato impossibile proprio per questi venditori di nascondere la propria reale identità. Il Suspect Brand Program è un altro programma che permette ai titolari dei diritti di non solo segnalarci dei singoli listings, bensì interi brand che siano focalizzati principalmente sulla promozione di prodotti in violazione, per rimuovere interi brand. Di recente lancio è anche la Counterfeit Crimes Unit.
And then recently we have this new activity, Counterfeit Crimes Unit within Amazon, where we focus on offline cases. And we have partnerships with brands. And we have these cases. We have a joint collaboration, Amazon and Valentino, against a bad actor that is a common enemy, which would sell counterfeited products branded Valentino, despite the fact that he had already been blocked by Amazon, and despite everything, he continued to go on with this activity, and we're very proud that finally we have been able to stop it. And then another activity of identification of the enemy is the sharing of data in the US with the IPR Center, and in Europe with Europol. With them, we are sharing particularly relevant data about a specific enemy, where there are complaints coming from brands for, in the case of a sale which has actually taken place, and every 3 months we share reports with these authorities in the US and Europe. One question: given the increase in online sales in the past few months due to the pandemic, not only in Italy but everywhere, has this activity grown within Amazon? Well, for us, investments have multiplied in this sector, because we are perfectly aware that the problem cannot be neglected. And now, together with COVID, we have an anti-fraud team which has been further reinforced in order to face this problem. In 2019, these investments enabled us to stop 2.5 million bad actor accounts before they were even able to sell one single product on Amazon. And then we blocked 6 billion listings of suspected violation. Of course, this is an activity based on technology, so not by a human being, so there is not the level of certainty in order to declare them a bad account. And then we have seen, or we have recorded a difference as compared to the pre-brand registry period. And now we have 90% fewer suspected infringements being reported per brand as compared with the period before the launch of brand registry. So the machine learning department is very much evolved. It's got a lot of resources, and we work on brand protection, and we are dedicated to preventing frauds on Amazon. Well, given the big money which goes around, I would like to ask from General Nisi, what is the role of organized crime in this sector? Well, organized crime is certainly something which further boosts this sector. This sector can develop because it has the typical characteristics which appeal to organized crime, because we know that organized crime is a criminal, but they're also entrepreneurs. They are criminal entrepreneurs, and there are all the elements there which make the business profitable. In this specific case, the most important elements are a very low social complaint, because perhaps only now, thanks to certain campaigns, our consumers understanding that buying counterfeited products is something which can be disapproved because it creates a huge and widespread damage. So, social disapproval, which is still pretty low, and we will have to work on that. Above all, at school, starting from kids, starting from young people. So that is the first point. And then the system of sanctions, well, we're not speaking about killings, so the system of sanctions, which is pretty light, and it becomes heavier when the counterfeiting activities associated with other crimes, recycling, tax evasion, etc. And in the end, sanctions increase. But let's say that per se, there is this feeling that in the end, you just risk 2 or 3 years of jail, and that's not so bad for criminals. And that with an economic return, which is really huge, as Mr. Peserico said earlier, 1 to 10 is the profitability. And then crime, common crime and organized crime has a large availability of cash, which can be used to buy raw materials. So they go to China, where raw material is produced, And then you look for an Italian craftsman who makes that raw material apparently similar to made in Italy, real original products. So there is a series of factors whereby this market is not affected by the crisis. They continue to produce revenues. And it's important to do something in all these issues. So it's important to work on the cultural side, starting in the schools, letting young people understand that this is not a zero-risk activity, because the damage that you create is really a widespread damage. And then on our side, law enforcement is very important. Well, we seize millions and a lot of containers. Well, as we have here the representative of an important brand, certainly hit by this problem, well, I would like to know from Mrs. Cherie if all these measures that we have mentioned so far are sufficient for a brand like Bulgari in order to contrast web-based counterfeiting. Well, I think that you can stop this and contrast this phenomenon only if you put together all the actors, all the stakeholders. So a greater protection of brands, a greater collaboration with the platforms. And then a harmonized system of procedures and greater partnership, a greater cooperation by all actors. Yes, absolutely. And all this can be done if the product is well protected at the source. By this, I mean that if you produce jewels and watches, well, these products have to be protected at the source. But we have to protect the product per se with some specific markers. Yeah, something that companies are learning to do. Well, I would like to thank our guests because the time has elapsed. Thank you so much for being with us and for sharing with us your know-how. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.